Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
January 28, 2020, the International Data Privacy Day. First up, the Portuguese man behind a website that pulled back the curtain on the world soccer corrupt business dealings also unearthed the documents related to the fortunes of Africa's richest woman, that being Isabel Dos Santos. As reported by the New York Times, Rui Pinto is the soccer fanatic who began hacking into the legal and financial networks supporting FIFA's multi-billion-dollar industry. Now he is responsible for leading to the information on Dos Santos as the fallout still continues. So interesting that one hacker was able to not only hack both of these secretive organizations, but also bring these to light. Next up from Bloomberg, the Serious Fraud Office is now in trial with 2 former Unaoil executives and a sales manager at a client company. Single buoy moorings are charged with conspiracy to make corrupt payments to secure multi-million-dollar business contracts in Iraq. The accusations against Stephen Whiteley, Paul Bond, and Ziad Alki follow the serious frauds investigation into corruption. All 3 men deny the charge. The Unaoil case is now been fairly well documented, but it's going to be interesting to see if the SFO can actually get some convictions out of this. Next up from the Wall Street Journal, Risk and Compliance Journal, Eagle Shipping International provided transportation services for blacklisted Myanmar-based companies and settled allegations of trade secret violations. The operating arm of this NASDAQ-listed company agreed to settle violations, the Treasury Department announced. Eagle Shipping Limited, a bulk carrier of commodities, will pay about $1.13 million to settle allegations. It provided transportation services from Myanmar to Singapore for Mawati Trading Limited, a company that was blacklisted by the United States at the time. The sanctions have subsequently been lifted, but Eagle Bulk Shipping engaged in trade sanction violations prior to that time. The company did say it's committed to observing all regulations. It's headquartered in Stamford, Connecticut. And finally, listeners to this podcast and readers of my blog will certainly recall Huawei and the U.S. government's campaign against it. However, now it turns out that the Pentagon is stalling a bid to further limit Huawei's access to U.S. technology. The Office of Ellen Lord, the Undersecretary for Defense Acquisition and Sustainment, vetoed a Commerce Department proposal that would have made it harder for U.S. companies overseas to sell computer chips and other components to Huawei. The Pentagon feared additional limits would cost U.S. companies so much revenue that their research spending would suffer. It's a very interesting take, finally, not by the Trump administration, but by the professional bureaucracy that understand the intended and unintended consequences of the Huawei ban and how the Trump administration is going after Huawei, and that the collateral consequences to not only U.S. businesses, but U.S. allies and others that support the United States is seriously damaged by this frontal attack on Huawei. So good to see some rational thinking going on, at least in the Pentagon, around the Huawei issue. Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening.